lawyers are advocates for their clients for legal, matters, whatever that might be. I kind of see myself as an advocate for the attorneys, helping them with the digital marketing vendors.
Sure. Strategies, sweet success.
Google had a major leak. So as it happens, Google left some code unsecured on GitHub. And GitHub is like a repository of code that a lot of programmers use to share like code across projects. And what happened is like Google left some of their search algorithm code unsecured, which is like the holy grail for search engine optimizers, is that how Google decides how to rank one website over the other. So this information was leaked. Some brave soul, some hero found it and shared it with Rand Fishkin, who's a big name in search engine optimization space. I actually time you and I met in Seattle, I was actually at like a conference that he did.
Nice. I remember
Yeah,
that.
yeah. Um, and anyway, so it was verified by Rand and a couple other like Google people. And so the algorithm is just out, and us search engine optimizers know a little bit more about what makes websites rank or what Google uses to make websites rank. And what struck me about it as is how unsophisticated it is. Kind of cracks me up how much stock people put into the algorithm and how much it knows. But a lot of times it's just making decisions based on, and what we found out in the search leak is good old fashioned click data and backlink strength. It isn't it isn't nearly as sophisticated, I think, as a lot of people thought, which is just super interesting to think about, at least for
I
me.
have a
In the age of
question.
AI, yeah, it's interesting.
Do you think that now that the algorithm's been leaked that they're gonna change the rules to it?
I don't know. I was thinking about this because, like, if it works and they like it, then they really shouldn't change it, right? They shouldn't just change it to prevent search engine optimizers from using what they've learned, right? So like if they shouldn't change things just because of that. They should change it because it doesn't work or it wasn't working or they were going to change it anyway. So I don't know. Maybe they will, maybe they won't.
Do you think that there's any influence out there that might, like, make them want to change it? Like, "Oh, gosh, now that" like, what if the algorithm oh my gosh, and somebody probably would have already thought of this already. If the algorithm, now that it's publicly shared, people can see it, they can analyze it, they can break it down and understand it. Is it catering to any businesses? Like, has any data been obtained now that people have started pulling this apart?
So it doesn't reveal like specifically why one's website might rank over the other. You might be able to figure out now based on because what the leak ultimately told us is that Google favors authority. Google favors expertise. And so like if
Money.
you're yeah. Well, not just money, but like if you're CNN or a major like Washington Post or major news provider with like a long history, like deep roots in business and in news and media, you're always going to outrank the smaller, scrappier blogs and websites. Um, but there are a lot of factors that play into that whole like site authority, which is what it was called in the Google League ranking. Some of that is like backlinks, which is one website linking back to your website, thereby granting it credibility and authority. Or by like the age of your domain, how many people mention you online. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that plays into like site authority. Some of the that we can only speculate on. But yeah, I mean, Google, we've known this for a while. Google favors like established websites with a ton of authority. Um,
Can I manipulate my own site authority gains, if you will, by creating a bunch of different other websites and then all linking back to mine?
this is actually like an older SEO trick, and it doesn't work anymore because it used to work so well.
Ah,
But like, yeah, so there's so if you do it really, really good, Google can't pick up on it, I guess. Like if you went through the trouble of establishing a bunch of websites and they all live on different servers and they're all talking about different topics and the authors aren't the same and there's no Like, you're not logging into all 3 with the same device and the same MAC address or whatever. Like, it would be tremendously difficult to do, but I mean, I guess in theory, you could pull it off. And actually, like, if you think about it, like, a lot of big companies already do because they're already deep within their own networks, and so if, like, this is just made up bullshit, but if CNN wanted a backlink from the Washington Post, they would probably just be like, "Hey, can you give me a backlink?" And it's that easy for them. Um, if
That's
you're
insane that all of that's already built into the algorithm. The time and effort it must have taken for somebody to, like, pull all that apart and understand it. Damn.
I mean, the search engine optimization has been developing for years. It's kinda crazy, and, like, this is a fun trick that used to work that you might get a kick out of, but we used to call it keyword stuffing, where, like, let's say you were targeting personal injury attorney, that was your keyword you wanted to go after. You would mention that a million times on your website, and, like, you would just repeat it, personal injury attorney, personal injury attorney, personal injury attorney. But because that looks awkward, like, if you just loaded up a personal injury attorney site and they're just repeating it endlessly on a white page, it looks weird. So what they would do is they would use CSS to make the text white, and then the background was white. So you didn't actually see it. It was just like invisible text. And that was like keyword stuffing back in the days with search engine optimization. And you could but you used to be able to gain a bunch of rankings by doing like silly shit like that.
Oh my gosh. It's interesting to see what people will come up with. I feel like you mentioned earlier, I'm new to all this, and I'm just like, "What if you did this? Well, what if you did that?" And it's like, "Pete, we've already thought of it. It's covered."
It's not even we like that. I mean, this community, like the SEO community, they pretty much exist to dissect what Google does and to like gain the rankings. And it's like a huge business. That's why like so many SEOs are really scared right now because of AI. Will it replace search? How will people find websites? Like so I mean, SEOs, like they try to be cool about it, but they're all really scared.
I love AI. Like, I know that a lot of people are like, "I love it, I hate it," but I mean, there's certain parts of it that are it's scary if you're not willing to change because AI is just a next change that's coming. And people are scared of change, and that's reasonable. People don't once you find something comfortable that you're used to, nobody wants to have to give up what they've become good at to try something that they may not be so good at. So, I mean, I get that AI is scary, but here's my thing. Something that is coming and it's coming in fast like a freight train. You either gotta find a way to get on board or get out of the way, or it's gonna run you right over. So, knowing that that's already on the horizon, like coming full steam ahead, I've already leaned very much into it. Because another thing too, the more you understand it, the more you can find where your place is within it or
Yeah.
around it. And I think that that's really what people are so desperately trying to find is that thing that they control in all of this because can't really predict as well as AI can. We should ask it like, what's all of this going to come to? I'll bet somebody already has.
Oh yeah. What's the end of all this? Is the end in sight? I was I yeah, I had a few times where I'm, like, grilling AI for answers for things, and I mean, it's often wrong. Actually, I use it to, like, meal plan for the week because 'cause I've been doing a diet, and I've been really consistent with about it, and every Sunday, I sit down with ChatGPT and meal plan, and, it's very
Wow.
useful. Yeah, yeah. Um, but, like, sometimes it's kind of bad at stuff. So, I'll tell it, like, "Hey, I wanna do a high protein diet and stay under this amount of calories." I want the meals to be repeatable, so I'm not buying a bunch of different ingredient, blah, 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 blah. Anyway, I type this whole thing in, put it into ChatGPT, and it draws up a meal plan for me. But like then if I were then to ask it like, hey, make me a grocery list based on the meal plan you outlined, it would make me a grocery list that would have most of the things and the ingredients I needed in there. But then like it would have stuff that wasn't in the menu, that wasn't listed as a breakfast because it's not really good at that. It's not really good at like making like very specific lists. And there's like one game specifically, it's like it's like a simple game that you can play with like some Python code where it's like um it's basically like blackjack, like beat me to 21 by like adding numbers. Like ChatGPT is really bad at it. It can't actually like play that game or finish that game. but like a simple bit of like Python code can. And that's not even AI. So it's like bad at like some things that where you're looking for is very specific, accurate answer at the specific outcome. But it's really good at like write me a freaking 2,000 word blog post about blah 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 and have this tone and have this many subheadings and then like print and it basically does it. Yeah.
What if AI is in and of itself one giant entity and it was just recently born and it's still much in its infancy. And so it's going to be wrong a lot of the times. And it's still learning and it's still trying to figure all this out. Imagine what it would look like when it's like in its still teenage stage.
Also doing hostile teenage shit, like not listening.
Yeah.
Um, or like you take them on vacation
Purposely
and they're
getting the
like, this
wrong
is
answers.
lame. This is so
This is
fucking dumb.
dumb. I hate the beach.
But they're like super good at math or something like that or something weird.
It's coming up with all of these angsty one-liners that's just like thrown back at you. It's like, hey, could you type me up a grocery list? It's like, yeah, blah, 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 blah. It's like that was really rude.
Kristine actually had some questions for me about what I do. She really didn't know. And this was a common theme because a lot of people know me and know of me, but don't exactly know what a fractional CMO is. So I'm going to let her ask me some questions to try to hopefully like clarify a little bit about what Tifiny does and what Shark Cookie does. So I'll take it to you.
So the first question that I started out kind of earlier before we hit the record button, I was asking, okay, so the first episode we talked about how we prioritize your law firm to get noticed, get people to kind of cast the bait, if you will. And then people see it, they're more likely to incline to call you. They give you a call, which is kind of episode 2. We were talking about, well, what do you do whenever you have them on the line? How do you send them away with a good experience, whether that be taking them as a client or not? And then this episode, I was asking Tifiny, I said, well, what do you do? What is a fractional CMO do at that point? And so a lot of it is kind of, it sounds to me like it's sort of the exit part where that's kind of like, hey, thank you for working with me. Until next time, let's do it again. So one of the questions that I had was, how do you maintain those repeat customers? Like what is it about you and your firm that keeps people wanting to come back?
Well, and I mentioned this before when we were talking, but all of my clients are repeat clients. I've been working with the same core group of 5 for probably like the last year or so. And like, I guess like why people keep coming back. Like one, I'm technical enough to talk about like SEO and web development and stuff. And that's actually really hard to find. Not tooting my own horn, but like I have like talked to people who've like tried to find that person who has like more traditional marketing training, but also like understand like what is SEO, what is like what should we do here on the website? Why does my website work? Why is this vendor saying one thing and another vendor saying another thing? Yeah, a lot of times, like I feel like a lot of people just kind of gravitate towards me because they're already working with like a ton of digital marketing vendors and like half digital marketing vendors are full of shit anyway. And so like you kind of need somebody. I and this is really hokey and I kind of hate it. But like I'm like lawyers are advocates for their clients for legal, matters, whatever that might be. I kind of see myself as an advocate for the attorneys against like the digital marketing vendors or helping them with the digital marketing vendors. Cause, if you're a lawyer, unless you just are super special. And there are some lawyers I've talked to who are also very technical. They don't need my help. But like, unless like you're already that person, like you do, a lot of these law firms do need help. 'Cause it's so easy to get ripped off. It really is. You know?
Well, you mentioned that you do kind of like an introspective analysis, sort of like where they're at, and they need to come to you. People that maybe already have somebody in house is already a part of their group wouldn't really need to come to you so much. So where do you just sort of like in the span of what you've done so far, where do you find that a lot of these companies or these firms have most of their issues at? Why do they need to come to you at all?
Well, so a lot of them actually do have in-house marketing talent. It's just maybe that they're whoever they have on staff is like maybe they're really good at social media, or maybe they're really good at writing emails, or maybe they're like new, don't have much experience. A lot of my law firms are smaller on the smaller end, so they don't have like a huge budget to splash out for a full-fledged CMO. Um, so like they have somebody on staff, but they need somebody to bridge the gap and to actually like manage like Sharp Cookie is kind of like a marketing agency. And we just don't focus on any one particular thing. Like I have a system that I bring to the law firms where we're doing a set number of things each week, each month, each quarter. And a lot of these are going to be like the routine things that every law firm needs to get done, like to grow their marketing. And then we also bring like kind of unique proposals or unique proposals that um, maybe it's something that an initiative we're going to push for that quarter, but it's not necessarily something we'll have constantly on repeat. And I guess like to answer your actual question, like why do they reach out? Why do they need me? Like a lot of these firms like really freaking struggle getting things done in the marketing department. And it's probably like a million different reasons. Lawyers don't have like experience managing marketers for one, two very different like skill sets, two very different mindsets. Um, Two, like I said, like a lot of these smaller firms are hiring like inexperienced people. And also like finally personal injury marketing is super competitive. It is according to Google Ads, like those are the most expensive keywords there are. And so, to compete as a personal injury firm, you just have to really outdo the marketing that a lot of these other firms are doing. And it's hard to do that if you haven't already done that before, if you haven't already scaled a marketing department, I guess.
It's kind of like your customers, the people that come to you, the firms themselves, they're high need, but low capability in terms of the marketing world itself. So having that expertise kind of following the market, like knowing what's working, what people are trying, having kind of that r- rounded view, if you will, kind of, keeps you high relevancy,
Yeah. Well,
highly sought
and
after.
I think that's for me, like, there's honestly, if you're going to be like a CMO, like for a law firm, like you're their full time chief marketing officer, you're going to have a lot more time and a lot more time and mental bandwidth to do all the stuff that a fractional CMO would do and probably outdo them. The fractional CMO is going to work with many clients and probably have a history of like working with many different clients simultaneously. All of them probably in the same industry, all of them doing roughly the same things. You do one campaign for one client and it doesn't work that great. You can tell all your other clients, hey, don't waste your money. Or, you have a campaign that does really well for one client and you can come back to your other clients and say, like, let's do this. I have the proof, I have the data. And so there's a bit of an easier buy-in. So that's what I like about fractional CMO because I was a full-time marketing director. I don't think I ever had the title chief marketing officer before now, but I was a full-time marketing director for a couple of companies before. I was just working for one company and I just felt like sometimes like I felt a little stuck, like I was doing the same things and I didn't know like what else could be done. And as a fractional CMO, it's a lot different because it's like every law firm is different, every lawyer is different. Some of them will experiment while others will play very conservative. And so you can learn from the conservative ones who tend to have like their ideas and what they want is going to be more ROI focused and focused on generating leads at a certain cost point. Whereas the experimental ones can show you like what's possible if you invest in a TV ad. Um, TV ads
You
are
know,
free, by the
you
way.
you just mentioned something that I wrote down earlier as another question. And this is pertaining a lot to what I really enjoy, the whole like the human component, if you will. The converse how a conversation is had. Like how do you interact with each other? So my question is how do you maintain a realistic view with your long-term clients? Like the people, like you said, there's different ones who want to take control, other ones who really don't, but you got to stay honest and real with all of them. How do you balance that?
Well, I mean, I think, and that no, nobody thinks this about themselves. Like nobody, like I'm trying to think of like a really good example, but like let's say you're going to go shop for a wedding dress and like you're going with somebody who's in the wedding industry. They're like a consultant. They know dresses. They know, they have an eye for design. They have an eye for aesthetics. You go to a dress shop, the bride to be tries on like 3 or 4 different dresses. Now, the consultant knows like the dress probably knows in advance, like one, what dress she'll pick because they have a good like track record, like what people of certain personalities, what they like. Um, and then like, but they know probably the choice that they're gonna make. And like they probably have their real opinion about how the dress that the bride to be chooses and how it looks and what aesthetic it fits and how the photos are gonna they all know all that stuff. But like it's what the bride wants. And so like sometimes as a consultant, you have to say, like, well, that's what the bride wants. Like, it's not, I'm not going to step in and say, like, no, that dress is shit. Do this other dress that's much better. No consultant would do that, because it's that person's special day. Well, for my law firm clients, like, it's their business. Like, it's their business. And if one doesn't want to spend money on local service ads because they don't like giving Google money, which, nobody does. Then that's fine. Even though it like super works, if that would actually like really work and generate leads for them, but they don't want that, ultimately that's what's important. Now, nobody thinks that of themselves. Everyone wants to be the client where it's like, no, you tell me what would work and what would be really good. But at the end of the day, like we all have our opinions. And so like I'm gonna pitch you. I always feel like I'm pitching my clients on ideas. And some of them are more open and accepting than others. Like and a lot of times I know in advance, like, how they're gonna feel about it. Sometimes I get surprised. Sometimes I'm like, "Really? You like that? Oh, shit. I'll have to bring you more ideas like this." So, I guess that's probably a long answer to your question. Like, I sometimes you have to, like, in the consultant's position, like, look at what your client wants, and ultimately, that's more important.
That's something that we always kind of advocate in my line of business is you can have your own opinion and you can have the best opinion out there. It could be based on facts and reality, but no one is going to listen to you unless they believe in it. So just by you presenting it doesn't mean that you're going to gain their belief in it. You have to get their belief and then you present it in a way that it makes it seem like it was their idea. One of the funny things that one of my previous teams did, we were always doing team meetings, team builders, whatever. And one of the little games we played was, oh, if they could write a book about you, what would the title of the book be? And mine that they chose for me was positive manipulation.
What is there you positive? You should write that. Damn, that would be a good book. Oh, man, I'd read that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, positive manipulation. It's like when you see that it works, you can be like, okay, there's a formula here, but you can put good things in place of the bad things and then get a good positive result that benefits other people as well as yourself.
Yeah.
And everybody wins.
Yeah.
Uh, same thing,
It
same thing with the marketing world too. You kind of have to work together and understand what the client wants first. And a lot of times experience is the best teacher. So if somebody's like, I need to do this, it's like, yep, clearly something is driving you to do it. Let's figure out how it's gonna turn out. So you kind of have to like go with it.
well, and generally, like, I don't like, if my clients want to do something, I'm like, "Fuck yeah, let's saddle up, let's do it." Like, because a lot of times it's hard enough to get the business owners themselves into the marketing and invested into the marketing because sometimes they get really hands off with it. And, that's fine. It's nice not to be micromanaged. But, the biggest problem that most law firms have is nothing gets done. The marketing department stagnates. That's the jobs where you have somebody showing up in an office making 50,000 a year and all they do is draft up e-newsletters and organic social media posts and essentially doing nothing. Like those things are important and they're also part of my program. Like we send e-newsletters each week, we post on social media each day, but also there's like this huge litany of things that we're doing that are not one-off. They're either one-off or they're repeatable and they just have to get done. And this thing is a little small part of it. Most firms are only doing this like little tiny small part of it. And so like anytime like a client or one of their marketers gets excited about an idea, I'm like, hey, let's do it. Because either it's gonna fail and you're gonna learn something that it's not as easy as it seems, or that this particular idea wasn't gonna work. big thing that I do that I feel like I'm good at that a lot of law firms are not good at, which is the lead generation stuff. Like, how do we create stuff or campaigns that'll get people to call us, that'll get people to fill out a form? Most people think of the brand stuff because that was in Mad Men. That was Christina Hendricks and her big boobs and her, and I've actually never seen Mad Men. So that is my impression of Mad Men. Christina Hendricks is in it. Um, and also that guy who was in Good Omens, and now I can't think of his name. Um, a good look anyway. But like that was everyone's impression of marketing is like Mad Men, the show Mad Men, I think. But really, like that's all branding stuff. You have to be able to, um, whenever you have to be able to generate leads. You have to put out marketing that says call us now and here's how you call us and create like this funnel. That's what everyone calls it, the classical marketing funnel that gets people to actually call your business. Like putting out social media every day, creating a billboard, creating a TV commercial, building a website, all this stuff. They're more like assets, like tools that marketing can use. And ultimately, like what marketing is trying to do is get people into the funnel. And there are so many ways of doing that. Um, but it's usually like the last thing that people think of when they think of marketing.
That makes sense. You got to find kind of your own competitive advantage that gives you a leg up with all of the people fighting for a spot in that funnel, or all the people that could be fighting for the spot that is funneling the most effectively.
Yeah. And getting the right leads to call. Um, yeah, for law firms, like it's all about like getting the qualified lead to call, getting the right person to call. So like making sure your ads are showing up at the right places at the right times, showing up at the top of Google for high intent searches. Oh, all of this good
I've
stuff.
seen I've seen a couple of different um ways to go about doing this because some places they're just trying to get name and number, that's it. Very ambiguous, very generic about what exactly they take on, cover, or do, but they're just trying to get people to call. Is that strategy necessarily worth it? Because I'm wondering if it's just like such a loose catch all, they're gonna have to filter out a lot of people that don't belong there. But if you have something a little bit more specific, a little bit more like call us if you were in this type of situation, this type of that probably works a little bit better to actually catch the right people. Which strategy do you see works the most?
Well, so always advertising into a niche is going to be more effective than like broad advertising. I mean, so most personal injury firms handle car accidents, truck accidents, bicycle accidents. Now, a lot of times like people don't know like what personal injury is, like what it means. And so like if you're asking like is it better to make a billboard and say like we're personal injury attorneys or we're car accident attorneys? Most of the time it's better to be more specific and say like we're car accident attorneys. And so like advertising into the niche is almost always going to be more effective than like broad-based advertising. And then like just
Yeah.
advertising like your brand is like probably just putting your brand out there is a good thing, but like putting your brand out there without context is not so much because people don't understand the legal space. Um, you're co-host on my podcast and you and I are still like, talking about like how what legal marketing is and how it's very different. And so like from a customer's POV looking in, like it's very different for them. They don't understand. They don't know the difference between a personal injury attorney and an estate attorney. They might call the same guy who handled their parents' divorce in like 1998 or something and ask them like, "Hey, do you handle personal injury? Do you know somebody who does?" Um, I know in like among personal injury attorneys, they get really pissed off when like a general practice or a non-PI attorney tries to handle a PI case. If you're a family law attorney, you actually probably don't know how to handle a personal injury case. You're going to have to like figure that out from the ground up unless you've already done it. And you're probably not going to be as effective at it as like a personal injury attorney who handles that exclusively. Um, yeah.
It's funny that you mentioned that because that reminds me of a show that I just recently watched. I think it's on Netflix. It's got, Jeff Daniels as the star. It's called A
Oh,
Man in
really?
Fall. Yeah.
Oh,
Oh, it's so good, it's so good, but there's I'm very critical about my shows and my media and my watch. So, anyway, point being, there's a couple of, like, things that are going on simultaneously in the show at the same time, like, a couple different plot lines. One of the plot lines is following, a man who gets arrested in a certain situation, and the attorney who chooses to represent them is someone who the man's wife works with. So he wasn't really that kind of attorney exactly, but he chose to take on the case anyway because he had like personal investment to it. And it was really interesting to follow because it showed this attorney, this man, this character, his evolution of how he saw this kind of case, and the end result made him, I feel, better attorney, number 1, and just a better person. Like, he learned a lesson through taking it on, and, like, he had to stop what works with his other types of clients, things that really got him a lot of success before, and then he had to, like, take a whole different approach and perspective to handling this case and dealing with this type of judge, and it was just kind of a beautiful story to see unfold, but that's kinda what you just reminded me of whenever you mentioned that sometimes people get upset whenever they see, like, other attorneys taking on cases that don't technically they're not is not their expertise.
a lot of the attorneys that I work with would probably like give that guy the advice to like, no, focus on what you're good at and what you know. Find an attorney who can actually help this dude where you don't have to learn a whole different practice law. And then like if that attorney does a good job for, your friend or whatever, or I guess coworker, then, you forge like a lifelong like basically a referral relationship. And you're without having to actually be a lawyer for this client, you've kind of made this person your former client a little bit. I mean, personal injury, like you can be the kind of attorney that tries to sign people from their hospital bed. Or you can be the type of attorney that gives people like several weeks or several months to decide if they want to sign and just be patient. They're like the quote unquote ambulance chasers of this universe. And there are, ones that are probably more reputable. But like, I mean, from a sales and marketing standpoint, like if you're a law firm and a like one, you need to decide like what kind of case like you want to take. Like if you were a law firm and you want to work with me, like you have to decide what kind of case do I want to attract because like you can't be a jack of all trades. You have to put out ads that name like your practice area specifically, that name your brand, and basically tell people what you do in a way that they understand and know that you're the guy to reach out to if X, if I was involved in a car accident or whatever. So that's like the important point for a lot of it. That's the important place where a lot of attorneys need to start is to decide what types of cases that they want and then, like, I've been in this position as a business owner, and I've seen a lot of other business owners in this position where the mindset is like, basically, I'll work with whoever wants to hire me. I want to work with everyone. I just want to make money. And then that's always like a huge setback initially because like once you hone in like the type of case that you'll take and the type of clients that you want to work for, it's gonna make like everything else like way super easier. Like where do we go and find this potential client? Is somebody like that on Facebook or TikTok? Or are they looking on Google? Or are they asking for recommendations? And it helps to kind of refine the marketing strategy from there. And then like,
That would make
but
a lot of sense too, because if you're dealing, like, with, like, elder law, you probably aren't gonna go to TikTok. Maybe you do, but you're probably gonna go to, like, I don't know, Fox News. Fox News channel?
that'd be crazy to get a spot on Fox too. Actually, what's funny about elder law, like, is you're not targeting the elders, you're targeting their children. So where are their
Ooh,
children gonna go? Because a lot of
yeah.
times it's the child calling,
Power of
um,
attorney.
yeah, or like my grandmother is being or my mother is being abused in a nursing home. Or and I mean it does depend on like the nature of the case. But like sometimes it's not even like you're an elder law, so you're targeting elders, not necessarily you might be targeting your kids. So maybe you are on TikTok. I'm maybe not
It's
up to the
good to
top.
know
I'm
who
not
you're
gonna say
actually targeting. Yeah.
yeah. And then, like, know, like, how they find your law firm and everything. So,
And
um
whenever they do, like, you can always trace that back, or do they have to provide it willingly?
so that's the interesting thing. I think we might have mentioned this on another podcast. Like, as far as, like, how they heard about the law firm, they're like that's such a complicated question because there are so many ways to pull it off. But, like, for law firms, like, a lot of time we're leaning on call tracking data. So, like, what number did they call from? Because there are a lot of, like, phone services that'll create, like, dynamic tracking numbers. They're essentially bits of code that you put on a website, and then depending on how you arrived at the website, it'll change what number is shown. And so, like, you call a tracking number and on the website, and it's gonna say the source was Google Business, then we know they found us through the Map Pack listing or Google Business. Or if it was, like, a link from another site, or if it was, like, the number that was on the business cards that we handed out with the special tracking number, then we know they came from the business cards. And so, like, call tracking is a huge part of it. Web tracking is a huge part of it. Also, like, a lot of law firms that I work with, like, we have systems for, like, getting leads into our main, like, um, a lot of the law firms I work with use a program called Lead Docket, which is basically like the intake system for the law firm. And so, like, if they show up as an opportunity coming from a certain place, then we know that they came from that certain place. And then we always ask, like, on the phones, and this might be interesting, like, when we ask people, like, "How did you hear about us?" We don't say, like, "How did you hear about us?" Because most of the time they say Google. And then we find out that that's not accurate, like, I've even had people call law firms before and say, "Oh, I saw your billboards," and it's like, "We don't do billboards. I haven't done billboards in, like, 30 years," or something like that. Or I saw your TV ad, and it's a law firm that's never done TV ads. And so people are notoriously, like, unreliable about their own buyer's journey. And so we rely on the digital data, but then we ask a different question. We don't say, like, "How did you hear about us?" We say, "Who can we thank for your referral?" Which is honestly, I stole that from somebody in a mastermind group years ago because that, like, stops people. They think about it. They're like, "Oh, did somebody refer me?" No. And then I went on Google. Okay, it was Google. Or maybe if they were referred by somebody and they were just going to say Google anyway because they wanted to keep this other person's name out of it, they might stop and tell us, the other person's name. But it's for some reason phrasing a question in that way is unexpected, and they have to think about it. And when they have to think about it, we usually get a better answer. But it's still like user reported. How did you hear about us? Is still not nearly as accurate as just like the technical data that we can gather. Um,
Well, I feel like I love that question because it makes them think like, "Oh, they're gonna follow up on this." So anything that anyone thinks is gonna be followed up on in some capacity is already inclined to speak more honestly or more accurately, I should say.
Yeah. Well, and then also, like, maybe it's like, oh, they might send a gift to so and so for referring me, and the law firm might, it might just be like a little thank you for referring to us or something like that. And so, there's benefit if they report honestly. But I just don't think mm, most people don't realize how their perception of their own actions can be off. And then also, like, we're really sophisticated in the digital marketing side. So, like, you might have clicked on an ad um, that looked like you were going to our website, but really you were going to something different. And so you actually just don't know. What are your top three favorite lawyer movies?
Oh my gosh, Liar Liar.
Underline.
I love that one. Okay, a classic, My Cousin Vinny.
Yeah, my cousin Vinny is
It
still
had it
one of the yeah.
yes, because he had to, like, go on trial and all of that.
Well, so I don't know when this one always comes to mind for me, but Reeves did Devil's Advocate, so there's that. And then Aaron Brockovich comes up, and I watched that, rewatched it after not seeing it for practically decades, and I was like, you know, if I worked with Aaron Brockovich, like if I was one of the people in the lawyer's office while she was there, I would have found her super fucking annoying. Like I would just be like, what do you mean she runs off for 3 days and goes and gets water? We can pay people to do that. Like, I would be in the meeting advocating to fire her. You mentioned something about interrogation techniques. I'll tell you something I learned about Dr. Phil. So Dr. Phil was being interviewed, and he's like kind of a grandpa sometimes because like he was actually like talking about like how like if your kids go trick or treating and they might accidentally get drugs instead of candy. And it's something like that old like wives' tale, and it's like who would get free drugs to kids? Like,
Okay,
where are
here's
these
my
people
question.
from?
Where are all these drugs at? All right. I went trick-or-treating for a good like what, 8 years when I was a
Yeah,
kid. Not once did somebody slip me a molly or an ounce of weed. Never. Where
I
are all
feel
these drugs
betrayed
coming from?
personally. Like, yeah, no, that would have been
What did
great. That
they
would have
try?
been super fun. Well, so Dr. Fell, he was such a he was a grandpa because he kind of fell for that stuff. But I guess like what he used to do is he used to like do like police interrogations or was called in as like a to interpret interrogations. And like this was actually on Joe Rogan. And so Joe Rogan is like, how can you tell somebody was lying? And best advice I heard, it wasn't even advice, but best tip I ever got. Dr. Phil said that if you accuse somebody of something and say, like, did you steal my phone? And like their reaction is like apologetic or kind of meek. It's like, I'm so sorry. Can I help you find your phone? Like, that person's lying. It's the person where you're like, "Hey, did you steal my phone?" It's like, "No, I didn't steal your phone. You lost your phone. Go fucking find your phone." Or if they get, like, angry, like, if you bring somebody in and accuse of, like, stealing from the store, like, an innocent person might be like, "No, it wasn't me. It wasn't me. I didn't steal it," and, like, just adamantly defend their innocence, whereas, like, somebody who's lying or maybe, like, not telling the truth is gonna be like, "Why would you think that of me?" They won't give, like, a direct yes or no. They'll only, like, answer your question with a question. Ever since I've heard that from Dr. Phil, I'm like, "Shit. Okay, yeah, that makes sense." Because every time, like, somebody has, like, cornered me about something, I knew I was in the right, like, I would get so pissed off, and I would just be like, "No, I didn't do that. Screw you, I didn't do that. Go find the person who did it." But I know, like, and there are times I got caught in the act, I'd be like, I'm sorry, can I help?" Or something like that, so it rang true to me.
Interesting, because I just don't trust nobody. I assume everybody's lying.
Yeah, okay, that's another way to do it. You'll only be right, it's like a coin flip. If you're say yes 100% of the time, you'll still be right 50% of the time. Yeah.
I don't know. I may be a little biased and cynical. Me and my job, I've had to fire people. I've had to ask people about their intentions. I've had to, sit adults down and be like, "Help me understand why you chose to do this." And I have hard evidence, undisputable evidence sitting right there on the table in front of us. Like, "Why did you choose to do this?" And people will still be like, "Oh, I don't know. I have this thing that's stopping me and that thing that's stopping me, and it's not my fault, and I can't do that." It's like, too funny.
Man, isn't that the weird thing about being in, like, leadership or management? Like, having to confront other adults, and in like well, maybe in your case too, sometimes, like, people older than you, or people very much younger than you or whatever, like, and, like, you're like, "We're grown-ups. I had evidence that you didn't do this thing, why didn't you do this thing?" And then, like, it's just, excuses or denials, and it's like, I don't know why, but I never, like, thought of that being a consequence of being, like, in leadership or management is having to have those, like, conversations and, like, confront people about, like, stuff that's just as obvious as sunlight or something like that. So
And that's something that they teach us a lot at the place that I work at, in the leadership department specifically. They teach us how to have conversations that avoid even entertaining the idea of allowing them to deny it. So, like, if you have hard evidence, you put it on the table and it's like, "You told me that you wanted to do this thing. You told me that you wanted to reach this goal. Here's the reality. We're putting that on the table. There's no denying that. Here's what we can do moving forward, and this is the commitment I need from you if you wanna keep your job here. Show
wow.
me that you wanna keep your job here. Get back and go do the thing."
God, that is so tough to do, like, because I mean, you're basically saying, like, "You're fired unless you get your shit together."
And it's also important to give people a safe environment too, where they feel like, I can actually tell the truth here. But it goes back to what you were saying earlier about like getting people to tell the truth. Cause I'm like, you can tell me whatever you think I want to hear, and it's not going to change the way forward. What's going to change the way forward is if you're honest with me in this conversation, because this is your maybe one or two or few shots that you can have an honest conversation with someone with your best interests in mind to overcome this, make it a top priority, and get it done.
Yeah. I mean, the believing and the message part is so important, particularly in marketing, because like, and I mean, just to reel this back into marketing, but like if you're hiring a marketer and like they don't like the way you market your business, they're like, oh, this lawyer, like they should be on social media. I just think they should be on TikTok. And it's a good idea, but like maybe that's not what drives revenue. So you're not on TikTok, right? But like ultimately, if they're a marketer who disagrees like fundamentally with the way you want to market your practice, then they're never going to get the job done because there's no buy-in. They don't believe in it. And so like I've had to fire so many of those marketers who like they believe they know the way forward and they're just not given the opportunity to do it. And then what they end up doing is nothing at all because they're not doing what they want to do. They don't believe in the what the substance of legal marketing and what works. And so, those people they have to go because if you can't get that buy-in, you can't get them to believe like this is how we make money, they're not the right fit for your law firm.
It's kind of like allowing external factors that you don't control to dictate if you're going to be the best version of yourself or not. And every day that you're not the best version of yourself is a day wasted that you're never going to get back. And it's going to be twice as hard to recover from a wasted day than it would be to have a day where you're, at least trying to do the right thing, giving
Yeah.
it a shot, learning how to adapt to it, wanting to make it a higher priority.
Yeah. All right, so we'll close it up for today. I don't want to say what we're talking about next time because I do next time want to prepare Kristine a little bit better. Because, like, believe it or not, like, if anyone's listening to this at this point and they're like, "God, these gals like, do such a great damn job," like, this is totally unscripted. Like, we talk a little bit about it beforehand. We're making up as we go. Christine's learning legal marketing, and I'm learning a lot about what she does and some of the strategies that she uses.
I'm making lots of notes.
She's making lots of notes. That's a sign of an intelligent person, I will say, because I too make lots of notes. Like
We're in good company.
we're glazing each other. That's my new favorite slang from Gen Z. We're just glazing. Um, all right. So we'll next time we'll talk about something. It's gonna be intensely interesting. You should definitely tune in. We'll see you then.
All right.
Okay.